Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you. In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Yeah, sinking into today's music. It's called Shadow Full of Dreams. Thank you, Rick Leffel. Was that a coincidence or synchronicity? The Radio 8-Ball show gives you practice seeing into your subconscious by noticing musical synchronicities. We'll be speaking today to the founder and host of the Radio 8-Ball show, Andras Jones, with music by Bart Davenport. I'm your host, Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a weekly podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and keep clicking on that ksqd.org webpage. But most importantly, I encourage you to talk to your friends about this podcast. My main passion here is to share my excitement for dreams, and you never know who among your friend group might be interested in dreaming. You could sound them out by trying to tell them about the podcast. Why not? Full archives are available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those streaming platforms. Also at ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Okay. So, what are... I always start with my personal dream work. What is coming up for me right now is a recent anxiety dream I had, which was pretty comical, really, in that it really had all of my usual anxiety dream themes. Like the phone didn't work, I was trying to get to the airport, nobody was helping me, just all those usual anxiety themes. And there's something about that. Like, I have never gotten to the point, I've never met anybody who gets to the point where they have no anxiety dreams, where all their dreams are beautiful. So maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's not about enlightenment. What does that mean anyway? Like, there is something about being human that's just inherently messy, and maybe that's okay. So part of my voyage has just been to acknowledge that maybe the mess is part of the joy. I'd like to say hello to my guest, Andras Jones. So Andras Jones is the host and creator of Radio 8-Ball, a musical divination where questions are answered by picking songs at random and interpreting them like musical tarot cards. He calls this consulting the pop oracle. Andras will be presenting Radio 8-Ball with Bart Davenport as the musical guest on June 19th at the annual conference of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. You may also know Andras as an actor in films like A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Master, as a host of The World Is Wrong podcast, and as an author of Accidental Initiations in the Kabbalistic Tree of Olympia. He is also a songwriter, and we'll be hearing a couple of songs a little bit later, one by Bart Davenport and one by Andras. So you can find him at Radio8Ball show.com. I'm sorry, Andras, I failed to write down your webpage.
It's what? Radio8Ball.com, all one word with 8 in the middle. Okay. Radio8Ball.com. And my personal site that has all my stuff is previouslyyours.com, or you can find it through andrasjones.com. But you can get to all that at the end after we've had a great and interesting conversation.
Okay, fantastic. I'm looking forward to that. You do have a very diverse set of web pages and emails and handles and all that, because you are a really diverse guy. I mean, an actor, a musician, an author, and the host of a podcast, and the host of the Radio 8-Ball show, which is, of course, the main thing I'm curious about today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the Radio 8-Ball show, and what is it for? Like, what is the point of this show?
Well, sort of like dreams. On one level, like on a physical level, the point of our dreams is to allow our brains to kind of defrag themselves. If we don't dream, if we don't sleep and we don't dream, we eventually lose our minds.
Yes.
So there is a hard and real reason for the dreaming state. On the other hand, it's completely meaningless. We have these dreams, and they either serve us or we forget them, and they exist to sort of, I don't know, be something fulfilling in our lives that is also meaningless. And in a way,
I gotta reflect that back. We're fulfilling and also meaningless. Is that what I heard you say?
And in fact, fulfilling because it's meaningless.
Oh, what?
Like,
say more about that. What?
If you're going to build a table, you got to get it right.
True.
You don't have to get your dream right. You don't. It's meaningful to us. It's meaningful to the dreamer, but it has no real world ramifications on anyone else. And in the same way that this game we play of consulting the pop oracle, the main reason for it, the main thing to get out of it, is the joy of doing it. And yes, and at the same time, the skill for recognizing synchronicity it's like a muscle. You train it, you start recognizing synchronicities, you're going to start recognizing more synchronicities. So if that is something that you think brings value to your life, and for me it does, then that's worth cultivating. I know people for whom synchronicities stress them out. They don't want to have those experiences. And so for those folks, I don't necessarily recommend this pursuit. It kind of depends upon how you are psychologically situated. And then, go on.
Oh, yeah, well, I was just wondering to kind of start with an example. Like, I mean, you clearly find synchronicities meaningful. I wonder if you could share with us a meaningful synchronicity in your life that's something that really woke you up or changed your mind about something. What do you give us an example of a meaningful synchronicity?
Okay, well, I'll tell you the sort of the first great synchronicity in my life that I remember before I had the language of synchronicity. This was back in, I think, 1990. So no internet, no cell phones, just people with payphones. And
payphones. Oh, carry your dime.
Payphones and landlines.
Don't forget your dime.
And letters. Amazing.
Oh, letters, like paper letters? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
With stamps and everything.
I know about this.
And at the time, my brother was living in Europe, but sort of just traveling around. My younger brother, who's about 2.5 years younger than me, was traveling around Europe, just having a good old time. And I got cast in a film in Vienna, Austria, where I was being considered for a film in Vienna, Austria, and they flew me out to meet the producers. And I had tried to track down my brother, but nobody knew where he was. Just knew that he was in Europe traveling around. And I get there, I fly in the early morning, and I'm all jet-lagged out, and I go and stay at the hotel, and then in the afternoon, the producers come and get me to go meet the director. And we're walking down the cobblestone streets of Vienna, and I see this person in a toga walking with two girls towards me.
Toga.
And as we get closer to each other, both of our eyes just sort of widen, and I realize it's my brother.
In a toga.
And he didn't know he had gotten into Vienna that morning. He was a street musician, just doing his street musicianing life. And I had no idea he was going to be there. And in retrospect, the fact that this meeting happened in the streets of Vienna, where Carl Jung came up with the concept of synchronicity.
Yeah.
Along with, in his debates with Freud over these matters, in the moment, the synchronicity was a visceral experience that opened me up to possibilities that I couldn't comprehend. And in retrospect, that experience, as you start to interrogate it, other facets of the synchronicity, like, Vienna is a crucial place to the birth of this concept, something that I was unaware of at the time, and years later, I'd get this new information, and it locks right into that experience. So that would be like what I got out of that experience was the full impact of, I think what synchronicity brings you is a sense that actually the world is more magical and benign and generous than we allow ourselves to believe.
Oh, wow. The world is more magical and generous than we allow ourselves to believe.
And benign also. That, and I think that's part of where the meaninglessness comes in. Like if I were to try and take that experience and make it into, well, that means my brother and I should ... or that means ... You're sort of caging something that is too big to be caged when you try to put that meaning onto it. That because I met him, that means ... As opposed to, wow, just you just put the intention out there and the universe will blow you away with its response. And there's something that I think living in a benign world, because this world is not benign. There's a lot of dangerous things that we face.
Very true.
Externally and internally. But that's one way, that's one reality. And there's also a benign reality that all we need to do is put our intention someplace and things will emerge to justify that intention. And all of that, like when bringing it back to Radio 8-Ball, by playing this game of asking a question and picking a song at random and then looking for the synchronicities that come out of that, and they always do, it just trains your brain to be more attuned to the subtler synchronicities than running into your brother in Europe. Like I don't think I've ever experienced another synchronicity in my life that was so outrageous.
Right.
And but to me, I've probably experienced synchronicities just yesterday that I've forgotten, but still had real meaning for me in terms of getting through my day and feeling connected to the larger existence in a way that I wouldn't if I didn't have those.
Well, we had the experience that when we first had a conversation and discovered you didn't realize this was the Santa Cruz radio station and that you used to live here, right?
Well, I was I lived
born
there, and that I was born there.
Oh.
I only lived there for about 6 months. My dad was teaching at UC Santa Cruz, and then he got a gig at Harvard, and then he got a gig at the Evergreen State College, which is where I grew up in Olympia, and created this format.
So it ends up being just a synchronicity, since it's not something that's a meaningful part of your life being in Santa Cruz, but that you were born here. Whereas I have the opposite. I was born in Massachusetts, but I've been here since '85, and I just love it. I have no need to leave. But you mentioned your father, and I'd like to kind of touch in to your father a little bit too, because he was a dreamer as well. I mean, he's even more of a dreamer perhaps than you, as you're more what is the right word? Renaissance man, with lots of different things in the world. I wonder if you'd like to say a few words about your father. He was a professor here, and he taught about dreams. I know that he wrote books about dreams. Say a little bit more about us.
Yes.
Richard Jones, yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say that the distinction would be that he was an academic and I'm an artist.
There you go. Yep.
The difference. And I think he instilled in me a sense that I think he wanted to be more of an artist. And you can see that coming through in the way he wrote his books. Anyway, his name was Richard M. Jones. And he was a very well-regarded dream researcher, and then eventually sort of a dream psychologist and academic exploring dreams. He was actually on the team that discovered REM sleep as a graduate student.
Oh, wow.
At Brandeis. Wait, no. When he was teaching at Brandeis in the late 50s. And he wrote a lot about dreams and their use and impact on education, which he developed into a format that actually inspired Radio 8-Ball without my knowing it. He led dream seminars, particularly at the Evergreen State College in the 70s, but he was developing these earlier at Harvard and Brandeis and UC Santa Cruz. And in the dream seminars, the dreamer, everyone in the class would write down their dreams. Mm-hmm. And then he would read, as the professor, he would read one of the dreams as if it was a piece of literature. Uh-huh. And then everyone in the class would interpret the dream saying, if this were my dream, it would mean ...
Like to themselves, like,
and then at the end,
they would share those, like those to be on their own paper or something, or
oh no,
or
they would
loud?
Just like there would be a conversation, it would be a seminar. So
okay.
So everyone would sort of give their take on what the dream meant to them.
Right.
I suppose some people might not have a take, but in general, everyone who had a take on it would share it, and then at the end, the dreamer, having heard everyone's interpretation, could say, okay, well, this is what the dream meant to me when I had it, when I wrote it down. Now, having listened to all of this, I can see these other meanings that I wouldn't have got otherwise. Mm-hmm. And my father would teach these in conjunction with, in a seminar with two other teachers of maybe a harder, like a more, I don't want to say harder, like difficult, but more easy to peg down topics, like an English literature professor and a history professor, and they would explore, Elizabethan England through history, through the works of Shakespeare, and through the dream seminars, where the people who were studying these things their brains were interpreting all of this through their dreaming sleep, and then they would write them down. And then my father's theory was that engaging that part of our mind, the dreaming part of our mind, allowed us to integrate other information more effectively than just learning it by rote and debating it.
Interesting. Well, I definitely get that. That exploring my dreams does access parts of my brain that don't seem to be used much when I'm awake, unless I'm looking at my dreams. So, I mean, there is something there. The dreaming, the neural activity in the dreaming happens really deep in the brain, a different part of the brain that we usually use when we're awake. And so I think when we're engaging a dream with waking consciousness, that we're starting to make bridges between those different parts of the brain.
Yeah. And in books like that he wrote, like The Dream Poet or The New Psychology of Dreaming or Fantasy and Feeling in Education, my father was trying to make the case that bringing dreams and the study of dreams and the exploration of dreams into academia leads to better educated, more better psychologically integrated people. And I have to wonder if my father were alive and he looked at some of the struggles currently in academia with a lot of sort of reactionary politics going on, that he might see how, this is why we need more dreams as the part of our education, because it creates compassion and flexible thinking in a way that I think we could really use right now.
Absolutely. Well, of course, Carl Jung was really famous for talking about the impact of dreaming on the cultural collective, and he was around the brink of World War I, right? When he was doing
Two.
What was World War II? So they'd already been through World War I, and then my history is not my strong point.
Yes.
But there was a sense that there was an impending war happening, and he believed that if we had enough awareness of our dreams and connection with our subconscious, that we wouldn't need to go to war, and that we could actually bypass some of these horrible conflicts that humans get involved in. And I think we need that more than ever right now.
Yeah, to move beyond projection to integration.
Yeah.
Like, it's really easy to project our shadow onto the other, and then we go and kill the other and have a feeling that we've slayed the dragon.
But it was still
Whereas
in us.
More psychologically healthy people slay the dragons in their own mind
Yes.
And then realize that the person they were projecting it onto was just their neighbor.
It's just a person
on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I should say, to connect my father's dream work to the Radio8Ball format and the Radio8Ball show, there is a pretty amazing synchronicity almost along the lines of running into my brother in Vienna the way I did. I've been doing Radio8Ball on KAOS in Olympia, the college community radio station there at the Evergreen State College, for about 2 or 3 years, maybe more, maybe a little bit more, but not long into it. I've now been doing it for like 25 years, so wow. 2 or 3 years is kind of a drop in the bucket. And I was doing the show, and someone who'd called in several times before called in once, and she was like, "Hey, I listened to the show, and I've been thinking it kind of reminds me of this dream work I've been doing." And in this dream work, she was like, when people would share their dreams, we would say, if this were my dream, then it would be like, then this is how I would interpret it. And I maybe would encourage that with this format, when you play a song and you ask people what do they think of that, rather than saying, I think this means that, you could say, if this were the answer to my question, then it would mean this. I was like, wow, that's wild. That kind of reminds me. Where are you doing these dream seminars? She's like, oh, no, I'm not doing them currently. This was something I did at Evergreen in the 70s.
So if this dream were the answer to my question, if this song were the answer to the question, we always do it with the dream.
If this were my question, then that's what this song would mean, as opposed to this is what I think the song means for you. But what came out of that was that she had been in my father's dream seminars, and she saw the connection between Radio8Ball and his dream seminars in a way that I had never even thought of. I had the time, and this is also, I think, one of the aspects of synchronicity, is that a lot of times the biggest synchronicities in our life are they would require us to accept sort of a magical continuity to life that we just can't believe exists, so we don't see them. And I can say that most of the really sort of blow you away kind of synchronicities that have happened in my life are things that, as they were happening, I was totally blind to how synchronistic they were. Like creating Radio8Ball at the Evergreen State College in the years after my father's death, and being totally unaware that this thing I was building was profoundly influenced by my father's dream seminars. Or like how when I was 19 and I got cast in Nightmare on Elm Street, that I was acting in the only dream-themed, film franchise in film history, and because of growing up in a dream family, that should have been significant. But at the time, it had no significance to me whatsoever.
Okay, so sometimes we don't recognize them till later. Got it, yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of times. And this is kind of why one of the things I like doing with Radio8Ball is when we do a musical divination, they're always recorded. We do them for public consumption. They exist as a podcast or a radio rebroadcast or as something on film. And I know for myself that whenever I always make myself ask a question to demonstrate how it works, and when I get the answer in the moment, I'm always wrong. But within a day or 2 or 3 or a week or a month or a year, and I look back on it, it's so obvious how many things the Pop Oracle was giving me in terms of telling me exactly where I was and what I should be focusing on. But I was so attached to wanting things to work out a certain way that I couldn't see in the way that I could, even with a few days of distance from the actual moment. And I think that's part of one of the things, the lessons to learn from playing this game of musical divination, is how blind we are to what is actually going on in the moment most of the time. And again, that idea, and not that we're blind to the dangers inherent in any moment, but that we're blind to the possibilities, to the magic, to the insight in any given moment, because we are so sort of focused on what feels like survival.
Yes, indeed. So, Andras Jones, the host of the Radio 8-Ball show. So good to have you on the show. I've got a lot more questions. I want to talk to you about how to ask a really good question, as well as the thing about musical divination. And we're going to have a few clips from Andras himself and also from his collaborator, Bart Davenport, when we come back after this break. Okay, this is Catherine of the Dream Journal, and I have with me in the studio Tony Rissimano, as this is our spring pledge drive. We only come to you twice a year.
You are listening to the Dream Journal with Catherine Bell, and it is on KSQD, and it is a unique experience and one of the most popular shows on this station. Think about it, a show about dream interpretation. You're not going to get that at, the big KHJ. Ain't going to happen. And because you are listening to the Dream Journal right now, I know you value the programs that KSQD provides, because there's a direct connection between the Dream Journal and the other programs you love and our ability to keep bringing them to you. So please, won't you make a donation right now to ensure that this program will be here for you next week, next year? It's quick and it's easy. Only takes a couple of minutes. You can pledge online at ksqd.org. It makes a big difference for your community. Over 90% of our income comes from you, our cherished listener. So please go online to ksqd.org and make a pledge now in whatever amount you can afford.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few more words about the Dream Journal. It is a really unique show. We have just recently completed our 200th podcast. So we have over 200 interviews with different people, including the amazing Robert Moss. We have a local Jungian analyst, Eva Ryder. And we have had shows about journaling your dreams and empathy, and about playing with your dreams with Katie Mason. And then just last week was Sacred Dancing as Inspired by Dreams. But the one thing truly unique about this show is that we take live call-ins. There are a number of other dream podcasts out there which do a very fine job with interviews, but no one else takes live call-ins. And this is totally made possible by appearing on a live radio station like KSQD.org. And so by supporting the radio station, you are really supporting this chance to get your personal dream answered. Okay, this is the Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell, and our guest today is Andras Jones.
Hello.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Radio 8-Ball show, and I wanted to let everybody know that Andras Jones will be performing his Radio 8-Ball show, if that's the right way to say that, at the Dream Conference in June up in Ashland, Oregon. That's IASD Dream Conference, June 17th or 18th to the 22nd. And one of our keynote speakers, so to say, is going to be Andras doing his Radio 8-Ball show for a whole room full of dreamers.
Yes, at the IASD on June 19th. We'll be presenting that on Monday night. Yes. And every Radio 8-Ball show features a different musical guest. When we have musical guests. Early in the show, when we were first developing it, we were just playing CDs on shuffle function. But pretty soon we started adding singer-songwriters, because I am one, and I knew a lot of great, and continue to know a lot of great singer-songwriters. And so every show features a different songwriter performing their own songs as the answers to the questions. And for the one that we're going to be doing in Ashland at the IASD conference, our musical guest, as you mentioned earlier, is going to be Bart Davenport, who I'm sure some of your listeners are going to be aware of. Bart hails from think from Oakland, potentially from Berkeley. Sorry, Bart, if I'm getting that wrong. But he had many bands in the Bay Area through the 90s and early aughts. He was in a band called The Loved Ones. It was a great hard rock and blues band, sort of mod blues, like British Invasion style band, and then a really great sort of more rock and soul band called The Kinetics. Many of the members of that went on to be in bands like the American Music Club and Cake. And then Bart continues to make his own stuff, and he's one of my favorite songwriters of my generation. And so it's going to be great to have him providing the oracle fodder, as we call it, at our Radio 8-Ball event at the International Association for the Study of Dreams conference in Ashland, Oregon on June 19th. And of course, I'm sure that you'll provide a link to where people who are interested in attending that conference can get their tickets.
asdreams.org. It'll also be on the episode page. We have a song here from Bart Davenport, from one of his bands, I suppose, called When My Dream. And I thought we'd just cue that up and listen to a little bit of the song.
When my dream is your dream and not just another notion, memorize unwritten rules of endless devotion. When my dream is your dream, paint the rooms and hallways where we'll sing a happy tune forever and always. These kids today are a lot like me and you were.
Yeah, this is very catchy piece of music there. Is this one of the songs that Bart will be bringing to the show in June?
I have no idea. I never try and tell the songwriters what songs they should play, only that they should stick to their original material. So that there's no... one of the things that happens when a Radio 8-Ball show is good, like, and I think this speaks to how we relate to synchronicity. Like, when, going back to my brothers, there's maybe that was such an unassailable synchronicity that it's hard to question it. But I'll just say, like, whenever we were on the radio and someone asked a question and they got an answer that was so perfect, the immediate response was, "Come on, you set that up." And if they can't see, it's a reasonable thing to think, oh, well, someone would do that. I always say, if I tried to do that for every question, first of all, this would be no fun for me, and second of all, that would be way too much work. It would be impossible. But for those reasons, I try and make sure that I don't have my hands on any of the, I don't pick which questions people ask, and I don't pick which songs the songwriter brings, so that it can really be something that the participants can believe, and I can believe, that when a synchronicity really hits, that it's a real synchronicity, and it's not me being clever in lining up the right song to potentially answer the question that I don't even know I'm going to ask yet to start things off.
Right. So tell me about the questions.
He certainly is welcome to bring it, but I just don't know.
Well, I enjoy that song very much. So if he brought that would be lovely. And it sounds like in any case we'll be in for a good show, because part of the show is you spin a giant wheel, and whatever number it lands on, that's the song that the band plays. Is that right? So he'll play a number of songs during the show, right?
Yeah, he'll have a list of 8 songs, and our goal is to get through all 8 in the hour and a half running time of this presentation.
Okay, and so I'm looking forward to Bart Davenport. So I want to get ready, because
Are you going to be at the conference?
That's what I'm saying. I'm totally going to be there, and I want to get ready and get my questions.
I'm looking forward to meeting you. That'll be great.
And so I wonder if you could give me some advice about how to ask a good question. Like, how do I set up a synchronicity, something like that, where it's kind of on demand rather than just looking for things that happen by chance?
Well, I've found that the best questions, first of all, there are no wrong questions. Whatever you ask, you will get a reflection. So sometimes people ask joke questions or ask questions that are meant to sort of What's 1 plus 1? Is a question we've got before. And I know I say there are no bad questions, but if there were bad questions,
That would be it.
that might be it. But what ends up happening to that person is that the song responds sort of saying in ways that answer that question, but also might reflect, well, what are you really getting at with this question? And so I think that's what makes a really good question, and good in the sense that it's a good experience for the person asking it, is that it's something that they are genuinely curious about. So you could ask a completely like wild and ludicrous question, is Jamie Lee Curtis going to call me on the phone today? I think she's fantastic. I said that because someone once asked a wild question about Jamie Lee Curtis, but I won't bring up their question because it was a little bit more maybe disrespectful. And that could be a really dumb question unless you really are obsessed with Jamie Lee Curtis, in which case that's a great question because you have a really strong feeling there. Someone might ask what is a very important question, like, will we solve global warming? And they make, obviously we care about that.
Yep.
And at the same time, that could be sort of a general, almost virtue signaling kind of question that, although it's unless it is really personal and present for you at that moment, it's more of a performative thing. And the Radio 8-Ball may respond like that to you. The answer sometimes the answer tweaks you. I mean, I've done thousands of these, and I'd say in some small percentage, which means, if it's 1%, then I've experienced this, 3 or 4 times, and it's probably more than 1%, that some people really have a strong negative reaction. People, like, as I said, some people don't experience synchronicity as a benign thing, but as a threat to their mental state. That, why are you messing with me? I came here and asked you a question, and now I got this answer, and now I'm having to have some very intense feelings about it in a public forum. So also part of it is knowing what you're ready for. I think part of that comes from people who don't really take it seriously and sort of want to goof around with it, and then they find themselves embarrassed by that, and a lot of times those people get very angry at me. So I've had to encounter that. It's sort of a sloppy shamanism that I'm doing, and have had to learn by trial and error that it is, even though it's a lot of fun, and I say it's sort of meaningless fun, it has the capacity to be psychologically challenging for some people, and I try to do what I can to mitigate that. But
just
I think
like dreams
going to
are
your question, asking...
Dreams are too. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just have to jump in and say that, well, dreams can be provocative too. Like sometimes I dream about something I don't want to think about. Like I'm wondering about my anxiety dream that I was sharing this morning. Like there's something going on that I just don't want to be thinking about right now.
Yeah. Well, my father, he told me this when I was a kid. Might be useful information for the dreamers out there. I used to have these really, really bad nightmares about the big bad wolf. There was a picture in a kid's book, and that wolf looked scary, and for several nights in a row, I was having nightmares about the big bad wolf. And my father was like, you know what dreams are? The dreams are your brain's way of working through the sort of half thoughts that you have. So if you use the example, like if you're waiting in line at the grocery store and you see a magazine cover and you think for a second, maybe I'm going to look at that, but then you get distracted and go and do whatever you're going to do, that magazine cover might show up in your dream because your brain is trying to finish that thought line. Likewise, if you're having nightmares, it's probably because there's something that you are afraid to think about. So his advice to me, and it worked, was if you don't want to dream about the big bad wolf, before you go to sleep, really think about the big bad wolf.
Wow.
Focus on it. Look at his face. See his face in your mind. Have a conversation with it. Really get your mind fully around it. And then it will have no power to come get you in your dreams.
That's a remarkable parenting choice. I would say most parents would say, "Oh, it was just a dream, dear." So that's the opposite of what mostly people would say. That's pretty telling there.
Well, for my father to say it's just a dream would be, I don't know.
Disingenuous, at least.
Like John Lennon saying it's just a song.
Yeah, right. Right, good. Hey, so I have another question for you about the conference, like how you got roped in. Like, what was your connection to the conference? My understanding is you know one of our star members, Angel Morgan.
Yeah, Angel and I used to run around with the same crowd of people in Los Angeles when we were in our 20s. And actually, we reconnected this last summer at the memorial for a friend of ours who had been the organizer of a lot of activity that we shared, a guy named Steve Harris, who ran a little coffee house called the Mad Hatter, where a lot of us got to know each other. And we were at the memorial, and she was telling me about the Dream conference and saying that she'd like me to be involved. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, that would make sense because of Radio8Ball. She's like, oh, I know all about Radio8Ball. I have your app. I have. Like,
there is an app,
wow,
yes.
And I was like, oh, and she's like, well, I really think that I think this is something you should participate in. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I'd like to. Can you send me more information? And that led to conversations, and really Angel's my angel. She took this on
yes.
And she really fought to, I don't want to say fought, but she did all the hard administrative work of bringing this Radio8Ball show, which is not, like, it's pretty simple. You ask questions, you pick songs at random, they play the song, and we talk about it. But for as simple as it is, it's a lot more complex than your normal keynote where someone's on stage
yes.
speaking to you. Mm-hmm. This has musicians, and we're filming it, and so there's a film crew, and we're trying to get a celebrity guest to Zoom in. We've had a lot of great luck in the history of the show, getting some pretty amazing celebrity guests, from Viggo Mortensen to Alan Toussaint to Tig Notaro to Patricia Arquette, on and on and on. And I'm reaching out to some of my celebrity friends who are sort of deeply associated with dreams to see if I can get any of them. And again, each one of these things is another moving part that requires someone on the logistical team to think about it.
Well, speaking of somebody who is on the logistical team, has been quite complex. and I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a fabulous show. But Andras, we need to wrap up. I wonder if you could tell us some of your contact information, and then there'll be a little time for final thoughts.
Wow, this went so fast.
I know,
can't
isn't it
believe
amazing?
Okay, we didn't even have time to take any calls. We didn't do musical divination. Okay,
wow.
That's fine. No, that's fine. I'm super appreciative. Okay, let me just tell you, folks. So if you want to find stuff about me, the best place to go is previouslyyours.com, which is also andrasjones.com, and that has my music and my films and my book and my podcasts and everything there. If you're interested in Radio8Ball, there is a site for Radio8Ball called radio8ball.com, and we do have an app which allows you to ask it a question, you shake it, and it picks one of the over 2,000 songs that have been recorded in the history of the Radio8Ball show and plays that for you as an answer, which you can then share with your friends through email or social media and whatnot. And I really do hope that you can make it out to the event in Ashland to check this out. It's not too long a pilgrimage from Santa Cruz to
I'll be driving.
Ashland. It's a nice drive in June. And just thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to meeting you at the conference. And to all of the people I never got to know in Santa Cruz because my family took me out of there at the age of 6 months old. I hope someday to make it back there and play a show for you.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Well, Andras, thank you so much. This is Andras Jones. I'm so glad to have you on the Dream Journal. And I'll see you in Ashland.
See you in Ashland.
All right. Excellent. So, thanks for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz. It's live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. Tune in if you'd like to call in. The podcast is released on the Monday after the show. It keeps us growing when you subscribe, rate, and review. I am Catherine Bell. Find out about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. Email me at Catherine@ksqd.org. That's KATHERINE@ksqd.org. Follow Experiential Dreamwork on Facebook and Instagram to find out about upcoming shows. I'd like to thank Rick Kleffel, engineer and music creator. You can find the ambient music at pandemia.com. I'd also like to thank Eva Milady for audio editing. Intro music is Water Over Stones. Outro music is Everything, both by Mood Science. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.